born into this, your fifth generation. Is it burden or opportunity?
I think it's a bit of both. It probably goes to originally ignorance or lack of knowledge, like about the business, about the family, about the history. And when one is young, one is getting on with living one's own life and just being young, etc. I suppose the trick is, I think, at some stage to have some sort of approach to learning about the business and about the family. And something that I write about in the book, which we'll come to later, is what I call is informed opportunity. Because there's always this element of opportunity. But my argument is that unless opportunity is tapered with a certain amount of knowledge of the business, self-knowledge, knowledge of maybe the legacy or the ownership piece, the actual opportunity may not be such an opportunity at all.
What struck you the most about once you had joined? Can you tell us a little bit more about what this uncovered for you?
I suppose it's just learning about it and sort of getting on with it and not really giving it too much thought that it is per se a family business. It is just a business. You have to start somewhere and start working. I suppose the bit that does play and does arrive in time is this little bit of undercurrent and sense from people, not in a hostile way, but they're always going to know that you are part of the owning family, even though one might try to sort of lay that down and not talk about it or like allude to it much, but you have to reference it occasionally. I think the only bit I would say in that early bit, before you begin overthinking about it or anything like that and wondering what's next, is the understanding and the preparation that one has to work hard and that one just gets in there, rolls up one's sleeves and is seen to work. So it's sort of do good and seen to be doing good because people are actually watching.
Tell us about, I guess, stepping back then again from the family business, like what prompted that, but also you then took all of that experience that you had mentoring and coaching and developing, and you made that into your next stage of your career. And this is what you're currently doing as well as and now we come also to your very interesting book. Tell us about that transition from out of the family business last time.
When picture this was 2005. I'd started as a family director and I subsequently did 2 5-year terms, a lot of work on governance, a lot of work on the board. We bought large businesses. We had a problem with our business in Britain. I was involved in all of that as a board member, and I could probably write a book on that, although I won't, because as a board member, the past is the past and you learn from it and move on. I think it's worth saying for your listeners to understand how I got to writing the book was I mentioned earlier I was member of a family business centre in Cork. Cork is a huge commercial pedigree of family businesses. My mother's business were in bakery and things. Her father was exporting to Marks and Spencer's in the 50s. That family business centre came a cropper, if you will, in 2008. But I had then come across this thing called the FBN, the Family Business Network. So I suppose I then took that and launched that in Ireland as a sort of social entrepreneur using the family name. So when I decided to step down in 2015, having done 2 5-year terms, it was really with an eye to continuing that work that I'd started, trying to put something back, developing this idea for people who don't know the FBN, by families for families. The emphasis of it has slightly changed from when I set it up. But I do think, looking back at my own career up to that time and the work that I'd done with our business as an owner, originally as a manager, then setting up this thing in the FBN and looking at the wider family business environment, I always felt, I said, yes, if you look at a family business continuity, what do you need? You clearly need the asset growth and the asset stewardship and all those good things. You clearly need some sort of consensus with the family. It isn't going to be unity. It may not be peace and harmony, but some sort of consensus that you're going to go from one to the next to the next. But the other area, which is what this book is about family talent. Yes, the attention arms race and the energy is being put towards non-family talent, which of course we would understand in our business because, we've had non-family people working in the business since the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. If you're going to be a career successor, yes, you can make it work all the way through. And if you're lucky and interested, you can get to the end of your career and you can look back. And certainly that was the experience of many of the generations behind me. But I think where one is now and what I bring into the book, if you look at my experience, I've been a career successor. I'd been an social entrepreneurial successor. I'd done the unifier, because of course I was on the family council for 13 years, doing the constitution, doing the next generation of successor piece, doing all the bits that needs to be done. And then as a board member, I was what I called an ownership successor. So I try to sort of change my attention. The attention is, yes, there's all this good stuff around. Now it's ESG and now it's obviously crypto and all these technical and all these risks. But if you're coming back to people, I said to myself, well, if I look back, back at where I've come from, I mean, I can't change any of the decisions, but what book would I have liked to have read at the time?
So tell us a little bit more about sort of like the core tenets that you present in the book and that are supposed to help other family successors around the world.
When I wrote the book, I said, I'm not going to write this about families. I'm not going to write it looking down on the little successors or the next generation sort of playing in the play pit and sand pit. I'm writing it for empowered individuals who are, now we see even more, not deciding to join, but trying to find their way and their ideas. Individuals who are part of families, who are going out, taking advice, setting up quite complex and involved governance systems, which in their own right need leadership and have all these leadership. What I did, Rami, was I said, well, if I'm going to write this, let's take my own experience. So in the early parts of the book, I write about the impact of ownership. I write about the context of which successors find themselves and trying this hidden and this open things. I come up with a couple of reasonably simple frameworks. Then I move into this idea of, well, the key question is, at some stage for most people is, do I want to work for the family business or do I want the family business to work for me? And then that takes you into this idea for those who want to work or do what I call career successors. There is this idea of understanding your value. I don't like this idea of asking a successor, when are you going to join the family business or are you about to join? I think that's a toxic question personally. I think the question you need to ask successors at any age and stage is, have you taken command of your value with regards to your family business? And that completely changes the profile away from this family piece, which is fine and is very credible, and Lord knows I spent many years working on, but comes back to really what you're talking about at the end of the day are individuals who are trying to understand where they are, understand those possibilities, which I define as informed opportunity. So the early stage of the book is for those who do the career successor bit. Join. How do you develop your own career progression and understanding, finding a way, particularly in the big business. I have a whole chapter on credibility. I've never really seen anybody write well about that. For someone who's had to do it and go in, and what does it really feel like? What are you looking out for? This can never have all the answers. I can only have some of the questions. Then I go into this idea of support and how successors, and because in this I do have the principle that successors need to set up their own support over life, because others really, I don't think in the first instance are going to do it for them. And then having done that management career piece, I then introduced this idea of a transition successor, someone who, we always think of successor people, retiring at the end of a career, but there are those people who leave in the middle of a career for various reasons. The business gets sold, the business gets taken over, the part of the business that they are responsible for or hung their hat on, and you're suddenly left hanging out in the wind. And how do you deal with that? And then towards the back end of the book, I begin to change the language because, of course, in family talent, Rami, it's not just about the successor on their own. They're not this individual in this bubble. And there is the other concomitant or reflective piece, which is what is the role or the tasks or the understanding of the family, leaving aside all the glossy stuff on constitutions and on strategy and on ESG and on cyber. We all know about those. But what does the family need to discuss in order to create an environment where successors can develop and thrive? The family may decide we don't want family members working in the company. That's fine, but it raises up a lot of other issues.
I love this positioning of the book as a tool also to give us these identifiers, to look at like all these different types of successors that we have and all the in-betweens. And as you said, to not only look at this as a beginning of the career discussion, but something that will crop up in different formats along the way. And I think this opening ourselves up to that part of the conversation, I think, is very important because it gives people freedom to be part of this conversation even later on in their career.
The other thing in all this, and when I use terms like the impact of ownership as opposed to legacy, when I take things like, I don't like next generation because it looks very internal. I use the word successor. And also when I'm looking at this career path type stuff, the other bit that I noticed is a lot of this discussion and thought, it's very inward looking. And for the successors, for my kids and our own children, you look at where they are, what they're doing, going to have changed their job 3 or 4 times by the time they're in their mid-20s. For someone from a family business background, that's absolute anathema because some of them never have changed their role. They've been in the same company. That's fine. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to get into this discussion of talent that brings in a little bit more of the reality of what your successors are seeing out there. But at the same time, it's part of their family. It's part of their heritage. It's part of their, granddad, grandma, great uncles. So the kids or the younger people are interested. What you're trying to do here is set up a process that allows them the space and the time to find their way through this, to make some of the decisions, hopefully informed opportunity. They will make errors and have difficulties. There will be outside pressure. But I think in developing their careers, and I look at my own kids, our own children, they're all making decisions quite apart from the family business. They're all the time moving around and talking and moving much more than even we were 30 years ago. So it seems to me that the market, if you're going to talk about a market for talent and a war for talent and all this language, have a look at what impact it's having on your successors. Because if you think about it, a family business has leadership needs, for the sustainability of the long term, that entrepreneurial successes, however you may take it. I mean, maybe a person coming back in third generation who has a founder mentality and reinvents the business. Ownership successors, people who are taking on the governance. Those unifier successors who are working with family members on family councils and are generous enough to give time. Those uninvolved successors who are just the next generation successors, sort of wandering around, wondering what the hell's going on, but they're still thinking about it. So you're all trying to get these touch points, but if you put it all together, that mosaic together, that is succession. And really what you're doing, taking away constitutions, yes, the strategy, yes, there's boards, is you're appointing a family to leadership, however that may be. And in doing that, the old language is saying you are attracting the business to family members to the business and looking to attract them. That's only in my understanding of what people are saying, that it's only to one area. That's the career successor. Yes, in early stage, that may be needed, but pretty quickly these businesses are getting bigger. And if you look at the way the advisors are working, you look at the way the wealth people are working, you look at the way the people there's a lot of other bits that need educated and well-informed family members who are also, they're going to make their decisions based on their own needs and what they discover for themselves. Successors only believe what they discover for themselves. You're going to go on telling them for hours and you're going to go mad. But my argument is we'll have some sort, and this plays to my final bit, Rami, in the end, I tried to put it together in this sort of self-assessment and sort of leadership and sort of successor development model. Because in the early years, it's about setting up, this 3-stage bit, to give kids deep roots, strong wings, and the freedom to use them. And in that, it's a very interesting bit that I've tried to write about in the book is that interplay. Yes, it's giving the successors agency and giving these terms and helping them, the book that I would have liked to have read. But I've also put in what I call family talent principles in there, that any family talent, any family considering succession, I think will need to go through them. Some of them maybe, no, that isn't us. Right, but at least you've looked at it. Because my experience is the one thing that families don't like to talk about is leadership and talent. But maybe just turn the language around a bit, make it sound different, come up with some different way of describing it. And everyone will go, oh yeah, I'll talk about that. Sometimes the language is important. But I suppose it's trying to come at it in slightly different. And to be fair, I think, Rami, if you look, I see the Family Enterprise Foundation in Canada have recently released a huge report because I think people are finding this. They've gone around, put in all these structures, put in all this governance stuff, put in all the technical stuff advised by the technocrats, but they haven't really dealt with the main issue, which is the people piece. Yes, you need this other bit, but unless you look at some way, which is what interesting bit, and I'll finish this part of it, is if you look at those family businesses that have come to this and have some resources. I'm thinking of some of the big families who've discussed this publicly, like the Brennick Myers and CNA. their family offices are not messing around with investments and doing all this stuff. Yes, they're doing some of that, but a lot of it is spent helping successors deal with the impact of ownership. The challenge is to find out how that thinking comes back into family businesses of an earlier age and stage, that it makes sense because all the other stuff has to be done. And my only belief in this is that the only way this is going to happen is if you give agency to the successors and give them more stuff that's aimed at them. That's not teaching them, this is what a business is, this is what a truck is, but is taking account. These people are really quite far ahead and couching the language in quite sophisticated but fair and clear language that doesn't alienate them. That's the other thing you see with family businesses. They go and they're giving them all these, acronyms and all this stuff in business, and successors who maybe will go away and set up an amazing non-profit foundation on their own accord, which quite easily could have been done as part of the wider family enterprise where all boats rise. That person feels that they've got their own energy and their own identity, which is why I set up the FBN. Was to give me something. I say I did that.